What's going on, guys? I wanted to talk to you guys about the idea of hating communism and it being a PsyOp. Now, I will state that I am not a communist. Oh my goodness, yeah, shocker. But I am an anarchist. But there is a bit of an overlap with with anarchists and mainstream socialists, or even actual socialists agree on. One thing that the anarchists and socialists, because there is a distinction between the three, but one thing that the socialists, anarchists, and communists all agree on is seizing the means of production. There also is especially with the mainstream flavors of all three of those, there is the mutual aid aspect, definitely the collectivist. Me, myself, I'm kind of more of a little bit of a niche when it comes to my ideology. It's kind of a mix of, I would say, anarcho-primitivism, green anarchy, vegan anarchism, obviously, just taking ideas from, indigenous tribes, so basically, tribalism. There is the National Anarchists movement, NAM, which I draw some inspiration from them. A lot of people kind of consider them to be like pseudo anarcho-fascists, which there is a little bit of a similarity in the idea of basically drawing the lines on an ethnic or racial basis, which me myself, I'm not too, I would say ethnic and racial is important, but I would say culture is more importanter. But yeah, that's just one of those things right there. It's like, but so it's like, yeah, I'm going into this right now. I'm gonna be kind of defending communism, but not for the reasons why you think. More so the idea that the reasons why people use to hate communism is pretty cringe, and it's not based in reality. It's based in feelings and not really based in facts. So first thing I want to start on with, the focus on communism keeps people from seeing the evils of capitalism, liberalism, conservatism, and the liberal social order that we live in. So basically, that's kind of be like a general statement that I'm making right now, but it is true. It's if you focus more in on this boogeyman that communism is, for whatever reason, it's like that's the only thing you're gonna think is evil. You're gonna think everything is communism, and it's gonna keep you from seeing the bad. So it's like if you consider yourself a conservative, you're not gonna see anything that conservatives do as bad. By nature, you're going to see everything that conservatives does is good, as long as it's not communism. Better dead than red, And the same thing with capitalism. You're not going to see capitalism as the issue, because you see everything that communism does, and that's the real evil. It's like, what are they doing? Oh, it's like, mind you, most of the examples of state communism uses capitalism. They all had like a capitalist basis. They didn't abolish capitalism. So the idea that you're a capitalist and you hate communism, it's like, bro, you're just really hating the other side of the coin. But that's neither here nor there. And liberalism too. It's like a lot of these conservatives really get on liberalism, and they kind of lump both together. They lump communism and liberalism together, and it makes no sense, because communism is essentially, it's collectivist. Liberalism is more so the idea of kind of broadly painting it, but it's the idea of individualism. It is you are your special little snowflake, that kind of thing, and it focuses more on the individual, but as opposed to communism, where it's you're all in this together. So that's one of the main things. It's right off the bat. It's just basically an illusion that hating communism is just basically that's generally what I'm trying to get through. But every evil that is blamed on communism happens in our supposed constitutional republic. So yeah, it's like everything that people claim that communism does is so evil. I mean, it's all taking part now, and it's like most people would say, "Oh yeah, no, it's because of communism, though." But really, in reality, it's like no. It's like you always complain about the gulags. You have those things here. You have prisons where you force inmates to create goods and barely pay them anything for it. Yeah, it's like you can have the discussion about whether or not inmates have rights, but I mean, I don't know, man. The prison industrial complex is not something I'm going to be defending anytime soon, because at some point, me, myself, and I can find myself there just by speaking out against the government, or even just doing something that overnight became a felony. So I'm not going to be praising, the prison industrial complex that we have here in this country. But yeah, it's like everything that they complain about, just basically like, this culture of, this propaganda that gets promoted onto people. You think the communists were the only ones doing that? No, you have that here. Everyone does propaganda, and it's not all good. The propaganda for World War II to get basically the U.S. into the war, that was propaganda too. Uncle Sam, Rosie the Riveter, that was all propaganda. And I honestly think it was a waste of time. U.S. should have never been involved in the European war. But yeah, it's like anything that you say that oh, communism is doing. Oh yeah, it kills political rivals. What do you think happens here? You think that doesn't happen in the U.S.? You think that everybody here is squeaky clean? You think that every person, every politician, every scumbag politician in the U.S. isn't capable of doing that? Or even like on lower levels, the whole clashing between like these right wingers and Antifa. Yeah, it's like Antifa's going out there clapping people, but you think that, come on now, like the right is kind of is pathetic in that sense that they're not willing to actually shed blood and everything, for actually their values and everything, which is like, whatever, man. I don't know, man. It's you do you, baby. But every evil that communism does literally has been enacted by almost every government, including the U.S. So it's like, what did the USSR do? It basically was like a mini empire. It was an empire. It just didn't really label itself as such. Yeah, it was like overtaking territory. What do you think the U.S. does? Basically became an empire and started taking territories for itself. But on to the next one. Hating communism is a straight up virtue signal in the same way that commies virtue signal about hating fascists. This was one that I really I really needed to get through, because it's the same thing. It's like literally it is the idea, it is the epitome of a virtue signal. Like the same way that these commies and these phony anarchists say that, oh my God, to kill the fascists, stab a fascist, stab a Nazi, this and this, it is a virtue signal, because if they actually believed in stabbing a Nazi and stabbing a fascist, they would have no shortage of people that they would have stabbed. They would have instantly made the newspaper. So yeah, they're virtue signaling to their so-called comrades, because I don't believe any of these people are actually legitimate. They're most phonies. A lot of anarchists too, most communists, most of these so-called communists, it's like, oh yeah, these Maoists and stuff like that. Come on now, bro. But yeah, most of them, it's all a virtue signal. And the same thing, when you have like these clothing brands, it's like stacking commies and stuff like this, and it's like there's some clothing brands that I like, and it's just like, it's cool, but it's like when everybody claims to be anti-communist, it's like I don't even see it as a flex anymore, really. It's like I had my my Pinochet phase, where it's like, oh yeah, it's like the only good commie is a dead commie, this and that, and it was, when you claim to be a Hoppian libertarian, that type of ANCAP, yeah, it's like you go down the rabbit hole of being a violent anti-communist, but it's like you realize that the dirty wars and everything that happened in South America, the stacking commies for mommy kind of thing, that was literally all just the bidding of the CIA to impose their own right-wing dictators, So it's like how many people were killed? They were called communists and they were this and that, but it's like how many of them were actually like innocent women and children? It's like, oh yeah, it's like, oh, but they're communists though. It's like, so what? I mean, they're supposed communists here. They're not really doing anything. It's like the real evil that we have here is our own government, the constitutional republic that we supposedly we value so much. That's the one that's doing the most damage. But this idea that it is that's just is what it is. It's like it's all a virtue signal from both sides. Most of y'all won't do anything, but let's continue. And a government doing something you don't like isn't communism. It's just your government working. This one is a good one too because it's the truth. Most people, when it comes to government, especially on the right, I know it seems like I'm actually picking on right-wingers and everything, but I mean, hey man, I used to consider myself a right-winger for a while, so I mean, hey man, it's like, I guess I have the right, but yeah, it's like when a government does something you don't like, that's just your government working. And especially when it's not, when it's like taking a dump on the people, especially when it's like destroying cities and like ruining people's lives, like that's when it's working at its peak efficiency. You don't understand. It's like people think that the government should be working for you and it should this and that. Oh, it's like when people say, oh, I pay your fees, it's like, well, they're not going to care. They don't really care. The idea that when something doesn't work out for you, the idea that it's communism, especially if you're on the right, it's pretty laughable because it's just kind of like, it's like you just basically gave up and you just said, oh, it's just communism. It's like anytime something bad happens, or you those Christians, every time something bad happens, it's Satan. It's Satan. It's never them, or it's when other people do something, oh, it's Satan, but it's never the people having their own brains and issues and problems. But yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's kind of just like basically a scapegoat. And it's funny enough too, like I've talked about this before, the correlation between government and religiosity. Especially a lot of Christians really get into government, and especially right now, a lot of Christians, right-wing Christian Republicans or whatever, they really get into like the savior worship. Trump is an example of that. It's like Bush was like that for a while. I remember I actually had an aunt and an uncle. They, oh my goodness, man, they worshipped the Bushes. They had a picture of George W. Bush and his wife on top of their mantelpiece, and I just thought it was kind of funny and kind of weird. It's a president. It's a dude, and I think that's also happened with Trump. There is this, especially if you go to like the flyover states and stuff like that, the Rust Belt, the Deep South, and there's going to be people that think that literally Trump was chosen by God to change the face of the country and make it better and everything. But we all know he's just a dude. He's just a dude. He's not going to really do anything. I mean, those 4 years that happened. Oh, it's like I digress. But let's see what else we got on the itinerary. We have most examples of communisms are just examples of authoritarian dictatorship. So it doesn't really matter what it's called. At the end of the day, it's just a dictatorship. So right now it's like, if you have a communist in office and he's not really actually like, representing actual communist values, is he really a communist? Is he just like basically just use the idea of communist to get into office? I mean, that's what I would think. The idea that for whatever reason, so a communist government, first of all, government is communism is supposed to be a stateless, classless society, but then you have a state in communism. That makes no sense. There's going to be the the people that that cite the books that was it called, like I think Marx and Lenin, I forget which books they were, but where they actually give the go for the state and everything. But I think that's kind of that's probably when these people left. They should have just taken the L right there. They lost it. I will say. But yeah, no, a stateless, classless society. But what did you have in under the state communist regimes? You had the state, you had class, you had capital. It was all about capital, and there was no respect for your fellow man. There was murders. Everybody was murdering everybody. So that's why a lot of people actually say that those weren't actual examples of actual communism, because that's not how it's supposed to be. And it's like, to a certain degree, I agree, because yeah, it's like if someone's actually doing something, saying they're doing something, but doing the complete opposite, yet still calling it the other thing, that's not what it is. You know, it's like if you're called a Christian, if you call yourself a Christian and you're just killing people, and you say you're doing it for Christ, it's like you're not really a Christian. They might have the label of a Christian, you might have the identity of a Christian, but you're not really doing like Christian things. You're not doing what stuff that would be Christ-like. So, you know, but that is what it is. So it's just like, yeah, it's like authoritarian dictatorships don't need to be labeled communists in order to actually do bad things. And this is the last one for right now. So it's just like, state communism killed like over 90 million people. Like, so let's say 100 million, just to be safe. But capitalism alone has killed millions more if you consider all of the lives lost in trade wars, basically any war, because they're all about money and resources. And the squabbles over capital, so that could just mean anybody that was just killing each other over money, any kind of like that. Or the deaths from companies that have released unsafe products, so basically like anything that's killed people, and basically the general pursuit of capital and the depressions that are inevitable result of capitalistic systems. So it's like, yeah, it's people like to, you know, point out the deaths, which is rightfully so. It's, you know, it's pretty tragic and sad, but no one really looks there. It's harder to point the finger at capitalism. You know what I'm saying? It's harder to point the finger at, because it is very amorphous, and usually when people die because of capitalism, there's always something underlying in it as well. So me saying that this person died because of capitalism, people would be, oh, that's crazy. You know, they died because of of a heart attack. And it's like, well, why did they die of a heart attack? Oh, well, it's because they had been working 12-hour shifts. They're struggling to have a life with their family, and so they haven't been getting any sleep. So they've also have chronic depression because of the work that they do, and anxieties, and it ended up being that their heart gave out. But they're not labeled as a capitalist casualty. They're labeled as someone that had a heart attack. So that's one of those things that it's harder to pinpoint. But yeah, if you have the people that got were up against the wall, yeah, it's easy for people to just say, oh, that was the communists. The communists killed these people, and it's like, sure, yeah, but I think that just kind of shows that what people want to see. They don't want to see that the system that they live in is based off exploitation. They don't want to see that it's based off the blood, sweat, and tears of people literally, starving in other countries. Because really, people say that this capitalism is the best system in the world, but when in reality, it's based off of the exploitation of people in the U.S. and in other countries. So this idea is that this is the best system we have. I don't think so. I think really we need to get back to a different form of system. A system we've already had before, but we've just been brainwashed into thinking is primitive. So that's about it for right now.